Today we're diving into a story titled 13 Songs Released by Accident That Changed the History of Rock. We often assume the greatest anthems are born from meticulous planning, calculated strategies, and perfectly engineered genius. But the truth is far more fascinating. Many of the songs that defined entire generations came from accidents. Improvised riffs, poems never meant to be released, recordings that were almost erased, or decisions that seemed like mistakes at the time. What's incredible is that those unexpected moments ended up rewriting the history of rock music. Today, we explore how chance, improvisation, and even chaos gave birth to 13 songs that transformed music forever. Smells Like Teen Spirit, Nirvana. In the early 1990s, Nirvana were still an alternative act searching for wider recognition. Kurt Cobain had a specific goal. He wanted to write something that captured the loud-quiet dynamics of the Pixies. He wasn't trying to start a revolution. He was chasing a sound. During rehearsal, he introduced a simple chord progression that seemed almost too basic. Chris Novoselic initially wasn't impressed, but repetition revealed its power. When Dave Grohl added explosive drumming, the structure suddenly detonated. The song breathed with contained rage. What began as imitation evolved into innovation. The lyrics were fragmented, ironic, and deliberately ambiguous. Cobain mixed surreal imagery with apathy, never intending to craft a generational manifesto. Yet listeners saw themselves reflected in that confusion. The song captured teenage disillusionment perfectly. Upon release in 1991, it wasn't expected to dominate. But heavy MTV rotation transformed it into a phenomenon. Glam metal faded almost overnight. Grunge took center stage. Smells Like Teen Spirit didn't aim to change rock history, but it did. A spontaneous attempt to sound like another band ended up redefining an entire decade. Smoke on the Water, Deep Purple. When Deep Purple arrived in Montreux in 1971 to record the album Machine Head, nothing suggested they were about to witness one of the most surreal moments in rock history. During a Frank Zappa concert at the local casino, someone fired a flare gun into the ceiling, setting the entire venue ablaze. From their hotel window, the band watched as smoke drifted across Lake Geneva in an almost apocalyptic scene. What could have remained just another tour anecdote became creative fuel. That real-life disaster would soon become immortalized in song. The iconic riff was born during a rehearsal session, when Ritchie Blackmore experimented with a simple, heavy guitar progression. There was no master plan behind it, just an attempt to capture the atmosphere of that night. The descending four-note sequence felt hypnotic and primal. No one in the room imagined they were crafting one of the most recognizable riffs in music history. Sometimes greatness hides inside simplicity. The lyrics weren't abstract poetry. Ian Gillan chose to recount the fire exactly as it happened, even referencing real people like Claude Nobbs, immortalized as Funky Claude. The song became almost journalistic in tone. That authenticity gave it unusual power. It wasn't fantasy, it was documentation wrapped in distortion. Initially, Smoke on the Water wasn't even intended to be the album's main single. The label didn't see it as the obvious commercial choice. But once American radio stations picked it up, the reaction was explosive. The riff became an initiation rite for aspiring guitarists everywhere. A tragic accident had turned into a defining rock anthem. Over time, the song transcended the band itself. It became a universal symbol of hard rock power. Born from fire and rehearsal room spontaneity, it permanently cemented the band's legacy. The smoke never truly cleared, it settled into history. Sweet Child O' Mine, Guns N' Roses. In the late 1980s, Guns N' Roses were rehearsing in a small Los Angeles studio while shaping what would become Appetite for Destruction. During a break, Slash began playing a riff almost jokingly, treating it as a finger exercise rather than serious material. He didn't think much of it. But the rest of the band heard something special in that looping melody. What sounded casual to him sounded unforgettable to them. Axl Rose began writing lyrics inspired by his relationship with Aaron Everly. Instead of focusing on rebellion or street excess, he leaned into vulnerability and romance. That contrast between sweetness and hard-edged instrumentation created emotional tension. The song balanced tenderness and aggression in a way that felt fresh. Without realizing it, they were crafting a power ballad disguised as a rock anthem. The record label didn't initially consider it the album's strongest commercial contender. Other tracks seemed to better represent the band's dangerous image. But once released as the third single, it skyrocketed to number 1. The playful riff turned into one of the most iconic openings in rock history. Structurally, the song defied hard rock conventions. It began gently before exploding into a soaring solo that showcased Slash's melodic sensibility. The dynamic build made it cinematic. It wasn't just catchy, it was emotionally immersive. Over time, Sweet Child O' Mine defined an era. It elevated the band from rising stars to global icons. What began as a warm-up joke became a cultural milestone. Accidental brilliance reshaped late 80s rock. Bohemian Rhapsody, Queen. By 1975, Queen were established, but nothing prepared audiences for Freddie Mercury's ambitious experiment. The song wasn't written linearly. It was a collage of separate musical fragments Mercury had composed independently. Opera, ballad, and hard rock sections coexisted without conventional structure. Recording it required obsessive layering of vocals and overdubs. Studio technology was pushed to its limits. What seemed disconnected on paper became theatrical in execution. Mercury trusted instinct over formula. At nearly 6 minutes long, radio stations hesitated. It defied commercial logic. But once aired, listeners were captivated. Risk turned into triumph. The song redefined what rock composition could be. It proved audiences would embrace complexity and theatricality. The unconventional structure became its greatest strength. What started as scattered fragments became a masterpiece. And in doing so, it expanded rock's creative boundaries forever. Like a Rolling Stone, Bob Dylan.
Once upon a time, you dressed so fine.
In 1965, Bob Dylan was in the middle of a transformation. He was moving away from the acoustic folk sound that had made him the voice of a generation and stepping boldly into electric territory. Like a Rolling Stone didn't begin as a song at all, but as a sprawling 20-page poem, an emotional outpouring written without clear intention of release. It was dense, confrontational, and far too long for radio standards. Even those around him weren't sure what to do with it. During recording sessions, something unexpected happened. A young musician named Al Kooper, who hadn't even been assigned to play organ, sat down at the instrument and began improvising.
So proud about having to be scrounging.
His hesitant but inspired organ line became one of the defining sounds of the track. What started as a spontaneous decision turned into a sonic backbone. That unplanned moment added depth and urgency to the song's texture. The biggest obstacle was its length, over 6 minutes long at a time when singles rarely exceeded 3. Columbia Records hesitated. Radio programmers were skeptical. But once it reached the airwaves, listeners were electrified. The song's momentum felt unstoppable. Its raw energy defied industry expectations. Lyrically, it shattered conventions. Instead of romantic themes, Dylan delivered biting social commentary wrapped in a repeated question: how does it feel? The tone was accusatory, poetic, and unflinchingly direct. It elevated rock songwriting into literary territory. Suddenly, the genre had new intellectual weight. That nearly unreleased, overly long poem permanently changed popular music. It expanded what a single could be, both in length and lyrical depth. Rock was no longer just danceable entertainment, it was serious art. And it happened because someone decided not to trim it down. Layla, Derek and the Dominoes. In 1970, Derek and the Dominoes were recording what would become their only studio album. Eric Clapton had written Layla as a desperate expression of his unrequited love for Pattie Boyd. The original structure was slower and less urgent. But when Duane Allman joined the sessions, everything shifted. His slide guitar brought emotional intensity the song hadn't yet found. The iconic opening riff was reshaped through the spontaneous chemistry between Clapton and Allman. What began as heartbreak turned into passionate declaration. Their interplay felt combustible. It wasn't meticulously arranged, it was felt in real time. That energy became the song's pulse. The now famous piano coda, composed by Jim Gordon, wasn't originally intended to close the track. It felt almost like a separate piece appended unexpectedly. Yet that instrumental section added sweeping emotional release after the storm of guitars. The contrast created something cinematic. Two seemingly different songs merged into one unforgettable experience. Upon its initial release, Layla didn't explode commercially. Its recognition grew gradually, especially after Clapton's later acoustic reinterpretation. Listeners rediscovered its layered brilliance over time. What once seemed unconventional became essential. The accidental collaborations and spontaneous structural shifts transformed Layla into one of rock's most enduring epics. It proved that sometimes the most powerful art emerges when control loosens and instinct leads. I Can't Get No Satisfaction, The Rolling Stones. In 1965, the Rolling Stones were sharpening their rebellious edge. One night, Keith Richards recorded a rough riff idea into a small cassette recorder beside his bed, half asleep. The tape captured the riff, a mumbled vocal line, and then minutes of silence. He nearly erased it the next morning. Instead, it became the foundation of Satisfaction. Originally, the riff was intended as a placeholder for a horn section. But when played through a newly acquired fuzz pedal, it produced a gritty distortion that defined the song's identity. That raw texture captured the restless frustration of the era. What was meant as temporary became permanent. Mick Jagger's lyrics tapped into consumer culture dissatisfaction and youthful alienation. The repeated phrase became a generational mantra. It wasn't just a complaint, it was defiance wrapped in rhythm. The song embodied rebellion without apology. Upon release, it shot to #1 in the United States. The distorted riff redefined mainstream rock production. Fuzz guitars became central rather than experimental. The sound of rebellion had found its voice. That sleepy late-night recording session changed rock forever. What almost got deleted became one of the most iconic riffs in music history. I'm a Believer, The Monkees. In 1966, the Monkees were widely dismissed as a manufactured TV group. I'm a Believer, written by Neil Diamond, wasn't initially seen as a groundbreaking track. It was simply another submission. Yet something about its structure and melody felt infectious from the start. The recording came together quickly. When I saw her face, now I'm a Mickey Dolenz delivered an energetic vocal performance that gave the song life beyond its pop polish. The production was bright and immediate. It radiated optimism and rhythmic drive. Once released, It became one of the best-selling singles of the decade. The group's legitimacy skyrocketed. Suddenly, critics had to reconsider their assumptions. A so-called manufactured act had delivered a genuine classic. The song blurred lines between television branding and musical authenticity. It proved that even industry-created projects could produce lasting art. Melody trumped skepticism. I'm a Believer turned perception into belief. What seemed like lightweight pop became cultural staple. And it happened almost effortlessly. A whiter shade of pale, Procol Harum. In 1967, Procol Harum introduced something unexpected into the psychedelic era. A Whiter Shade of Pale was deeply influenced by Johann Sebastian Bach, particularly in its haunting organ line. It didn't follow pop formulas. It sounded almost baroque in structure. The lyrics were surreal and ambiguous, refusing to offer clear narrative meaning.
Skip the light, fandango.
That mystery became part of its charm. Listeners projected their own interpretations onto its imagery. The atmosphere felt almost spiritual. The band didn't anticipate massive success. Yet upon release, it soared up international charts. Its uniqueness separated it from the psychedelic crowd. Elegance replaced excess. The prominent organ expanded rock's instrumental vocabulary. It bridged classical tradition with modern experimentation. That blend felt revolutionary. The song became one of the defining singles of its era. Its accidental elegance reshaped rock sophistication.
Shade of pale.
Rock and roll, Led Zeppelin. In 1971, while recording what would become one of the most legendary albums in rock history, Led Zeppelin IV, Led Zeppelin found themselves in the middle of intense studio experimentation. The band had been working through complex arrangements and layered compositions when, during a casual break, something completely unplanned happened. John Bonham sat behind his drum kit and began playing a thunderous intro inspired by the opening rhythm of Little Richard's Keep a Knockin'. It wasn't meant to be the start of a song, it was just Bonham warming up, feeling the groove. But the energy in the room shifted instantly. Jimmy Page immediately recognized the spark and jumped in with a driving guitar riff. Within minutes, the rest of the band followed naturally, locking into a high-octane groove that felt both nostalgic and explosive. There were no elaborate blueprints, no long debates about structure. The foundation of rock and roll materialized almost in real time, born from instinct rather than intention. What started as a spontaneous moment quickly evolved into a fully formed track, capturing lightning in a bottle. Unlike many of the album's other songs, which featured mystical themes, layered production, and complex arrangements, Rock and Roll was stripped down and direct. It felt like a love letter to the roots of 1950s rock and roll, reimagined through Led Zeppelin's heavier, amplified lens. Fast, urgent, and unapologetically loud, it celebrated the primal spirit that first defined the genre. That simplicity became its greatest strength. When the song was released, it stood out immediately. Its straightforward structure contrasted sharply with the more intricate compositions on the album, yet that contrast made it accessible and unforgettable. It became one of the band's most recognizable anthems, a staple of live performances, and a reminder that rock didn't always need complexity to feel monumental. Sometimes, power lives in directness. The spontaneity behind its creation gave rock and roll a raw authenticity that can still be felt decades later. There was no overthinking, no perfectionism stalling the process, just pure momentum. That accidental jam session not only reaffirmed rock's foundational energy, but propelled it forward into the 1970s with renewed force. In honoring the past, the band unknowingly reinforced the future. Don't Be Cruel, Elvis Presley.
Sitting home all alone. If you can't come.
In 1956, Elvis Presley was no longer just a regional sensation. He was becoming a cultural earthquake. Rock and roll was still young, still controversial, and still defining itself. The recording session for Don't Be Cruel reflected that transitional moment. Written by Otis Blackwell, the song arrived at the studio with structure intact, but what happened next was shaped almost entirely by Elvis's instinct and charisma. The session wasn't tightly controlled or clinically polished. It was alive. The rhythm blended rhythm and blues roots with the emerging pulse of rockabilly, creating a hybrid sound that felt fresh and rebellious.
The future looks bright ahead, don't be cruel.
Elvis didn't deliver the vocal with rigid precision. Instead, he infused it with personality, playful, flirtatious, and subtly defiant. His phrasing bent around the beat, giving the track an elasticity that felt natural rather than rehearsed. The looseness of the performance gave the song its heartbeat. Released as a double A-side alongside Hound Dog, the single exploded commercially. Don't Be Cruel dominated the charts for weeks, helping to solidify Elvis not just as a star, but as the face of a musical revolution. The song proved that rock and roll could be both commercially viable and culturally disruptive. It bridged mainstream radio and youthful rebellion in a way few songs had done before.
You love me, you know what I want you to say.
What made the session remarkable wasn't technical perfection, it was chemistry. The musicians locked into a groove that felt effortless, almost conversational. The atmosphere in the studio allowed spontaneity to thrive. Instead of chasing flawlessness, they chased feel. And that feel translated across airwaves and into living rooms across America. Don't Be Cruel ultimately cemented rockabilly's breakthrough into the mainstream. It showed that a song didn't need orchestral grandeur or complex arrangements to make history. Sometimes, controlled chaos produces the clearest cultural statement. From that energetic, loosely structured session emerged a defining chapter in rock's origin story.
Let's walk up to the preacher.
Creep, Radiohead.
In the early 1990s, Radiohead were a relatively unknown group trying to establish their identity in a competitive alternative scene. Creep began not as a strategic single, but as a vulnerable outpouring from Tom York, a confession of insecurity and alienation. It wasn't crafted to dominate charts. If anything, it felt too raw and uncomfortable to be a commercial centerpiece. During recording, an unexpected element transformed the song's dynamic. Johnny Greenwood inserted harsh, distorted guitar stabs just before the chorus, reportedly in an attempt to disrupt what he thought was an overly sentimental ballad. Instead of sabotaging the track, those abrasive bursts created explosive contrast. The quiet vulnerability of the verses collided with sudden walls of noise, intensifying the emotional release. The accident became the hook. Initially, the song struggled to gain traction in the United Kingdom. It was even pulled from some radio playlists. But in the United States, something different happened. Alternative radio embraced its emotional honesty, and listeners connected deeply with its themes of inadequacy and longing. Creep began climbing unexpectedly, transforming from overlooked track to cultural phenomenon. Ironically, the band themselves felt uneasy about its success.
But I'm a creep.
They feared being defined by a single song that represented only one aspect of their artistic range. Yet there was no denying its impact. It opened doors internationally and established Radiohead as a band to watch. The very song they didn't see as their masterpiece became their introduction to the world. What began as a near throwaway recording evolved into a generational anthem of alienation. Creep captured the internal monologue of countless listeners who felt out of place in a hyper-confident world. Its accidental edge, born from attempted sabotage, became its defining strength. Sometimes imperfection resonates louder than polish. Wind of Change, Scorpions.
Listening to the wind of change.
By 1990, Scorpions were internationally recognized for their powerful hard rock sound. They were known for electrifying riffs and high-energy performances, not gentle political ballads. But everything shifted after they performed at the Moscow Music Peace Festival in 1989. Standing before tens of thousands of fans in the Soviet Union, Klaus Means sensed that something historic was unfolding. The Cold War tensions that had defined decades seemed to be dissolving in real time. Inspired by that atmosphere, Mean began writing Wind of Change, not as a calculated political statement, but as a personal reflection on hope and transformation. The now iconic whistle melody emerged as a simple, almost meditative motif.
Can feel it everywhere. I'm blowing.
It was understated, especially for a band associated with sonic intensity. Yet that simplicity made it universal. The lyrics spoke of walking down Moscow's Gorky Park and feeling the winds of political and cultural shift. When the Berlin Wall fell later that year, the song's message suddenly felt prophetic. Its release aligned perfectly with a historic turning point, amplifying its emotional power. It became more than a ballad, it became a soundtrack to change. Commercially, the song broadened the band's global reach far beyond their established hard rock audience.
Dream away in the wind of change.
It demonstrated that vulnerability and restraint could carry just as much impact as distortion and volume. The reinvention didn't erase their identity, it expanded it. What began as a quiet reflection became one of the most recognized political anthems in modern rock history. A simple whistle intro echoed across continents as a symbol of unity and transformation. Wind of Change wasn't engineered to be history's soundtrack, yet it became exactly that. And sometimes, the softest sound carries the furthest. And that concludes our journey through 13 songs released by accident that changed the history of rock. Riffs recorded half asleep, poems too long for radio, improvised studio moments, fragmented compositions, and risky decisions that nearly didn't happen. All of them reshaped music forever. Rock doesn't always evolve through strategy. Sometimes it advances through chaos, instinct, and fearless spontaneity. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the unexpected twists,